The movie opens with Dwight Evans, a beach vagrant with unkempt, stringy hair, collecting plastic bottles to sell. He lives out of his run-down car, scavenging through trash cans and dumpsters for food. The next day, a police officer finds Dwight asleep in his car and brings him to the station. In the interrogation room, she reassures him that he's not in trouble but informs him that Wade Cleland, the man who murdered his parents, is about to be released from prison. The following day, Dwight reconnects his car battery and refuels before driving to a gun store. Without enough money to buy a firearm, he purchases stamps instead, writes a postcard to his sister, and mails it. Later, he goes to a club parking lot, breaks into a car, and steals a gun. However, while trying to remove its lock with a crowbar, he accidentally damages the weapon beyond use and ends up tossing it in the trash. The next day, Dwight waits outside the prison and watches as Wade Cleland is released and picked up by his family in a limousine. He follows them to a club, sneaks in through the back door, and acquires a knife. Hiding in the restroom, he waits. When Wade enters to use the urinal, Dwight confronts him. After a brief struggle, he fatally stabs Wade in the temple and quickly leaves. Outside, he slashes the limousine's tire but accidentally cuts himself in the process. As he tries to escape, Dwight realizes he left his car keys in the restroom with Wade's body. With no other option, he steals the limousine. While driving with a flat tire, he discovers a teenage boy in the back seat and stops to let him out. When the boy, William Cleland, asks if he killed Wade, Dwight admits to the crime, explaining it was revenge for his parents' murder. However, William insists that Wade wasn't responsible before running away. Dwight abandons the limousine and walks until he comes across a seemingly vacant house with newspapers piling up outside. Breaking in, he washes off the blood, tends to his wounds, cuts off his greasy hair, and changes into stolen clothes. Checking the TV for news of the murder, he finds nothing. Realizing the police aren't involved yet, he leaves. Upon spotting a patrol car, he hitches a ride to Virginia. He arrives at his sister Sam Evans' house, just as she is leaving for work. They meet for the first time in years and share an emotional conversation at a cafe about their past. Dwight confesses to killing Wade, shocking Sam, though she seems relieved by the news. He also mentions that he expected to hear about the murder on the news but hasn't, meaning the Cleland family never called the police and are likely planning their own revenge. Realizing the danger, Dwight and Sam rush back to her home, where they find her daughters unharmed. However, since Dwight's car is registered to this address, it's no longer safe for them. Urging Sam to protect her family, Dwight convinces her to take her daughters and flee town immediately. While his sister is away, Dwight turns off all the lights and waits in her house, anticipating an attack from the Clelands. That night, 2 assailants arrive, using Dwight's car, and break in, one armed with a crossbow, the other with a rifle. Realizing they have taken his vehicle, Dwight rushes outside and, in a turn of events, manages to use it to run over one of them. Before he can react further, the second attacker shoots him in the leg with an arrow. However, upon seeing Dwight wielding a rifle, the attacker panics and flees. Dwight then drags the unconscious assailant into the car and drives away. The next day, still in pain from the embedded arrow, Dwight secures the unconscious man in his trunk and heads to a convenience store to buy supplies for a makeshift surgery. He attempts to remove the arrow himself but fails, ultimately collapsing in a hospital waiting room. When he regains consciousness, his wound has been treated. Without wasting time, he leaves the hospital and returns to his car, only to find that the man in the trunk is now awake. Realizing he needs a weapon, Dwight drives off in search of a gun. Remembering his old high school friend, Ben Gaffney, a former military man, Dwight heads to Ben's last known address, his parents' house, only to find that Ben has moved out. Ben's mother gives him the location of his workplace. Later, Dwight waits outside for Ben to finish work and approaches him with a desperate request. He needs to borrow a gun. Understanding the danger but wanting to stay uninvolved, Ben hands Dwight a Mini 14 rifle with no paperwork, warning him that the less he knows, the better. Dwight heads to his car, parked in an open field, where he unlocks the trunk and confronts the captive attacker, Teddy Cleland, Wade's brother. Standing a few yards away, Dwight keeps his rifle trained on Teddy as they negotiate. He demands a promise that the Clelands will leave his sister alone. During their tense conversation, Teddy reveals a shocking truth. Wade was not responsible for Dwight's parents' murder. The real killer was Wade's father, who had since died of cancer. His motive, Dwight's father, had been having an affair with his wife. Dwight's mother was killed accidentally. Wanting to keep their father from dying in prison, the Cleland family arranged for Wade to take the blame. Processing this revelation, Dwight instructs Teddy to call his family and set up a public meeting to settle their feud. Instead, Teddy suddenly leaps from the trunk and wrestles the rifle away. As Dwight lies on the ground, defenseless, he pleads with Teddy, telling him to take his revenge on him alone and spare his sister. Before Teddy can pull the trigger, a gunshot rings out. From a distance, Ben has fired, killing Teddy with a single shot. Emerging from the woods, Ben approaches as Dwight, still shaken, explains everything, admitting that he has already killed Wade. Later, Ben helps train Dwight to handle a shotgun, emphasizing the effectiveness of buckshot for close-range encounters. He urges Dwight not to hesitate when the time comes, just point and shoot. Grateful for everything, Dwight thanks Ben. Ben simply responds that, in his place, he would have done the same. Dwight drives off toward the Cleland house, ensuring Ben stays out of it by disabling his car, taking the battery with him. Along the way, he stops for a meal at a diner, while Ben, now unable to follow, drinks beer at home. Near the Cleland property, Dwight parks his car in the woods, leaving the keys inside before camouflaging it with leaves. Armed with a shotgun, he heads toward the house. Finding it empty, he breaks in and searches for all the firearms, disposing of them by tossing them into a nearby body of water. He then urinates on Wade's father's grave in a final act of contempt. Inside, Dwight sets up a makeshift hiding spot and waits for the Clelands to return, but no one arrives. Exhausted, he falls asleep. At dawn, realizing he needs to move, he retrieves Teddy's corpse from his car, digs a grave, and buries him. Before taking cover again, he leaves a message on the answering machine and hides, waiting for the Clelands to come home. The Cleland family returns, a man and 2 women. As they enter, they listen to a message from Dwight. In it, he pleads for them to leave his sister alone, arguing that both families have now lost members, making things even. However, when it becomes clear that they have no intention of agreeing, Dwight steps out of hiding and shoots the man. Unbeknownst to him, William, the teenage boy from the limousine, is also present. Sneaking around behind Dwight, William manages to shoot him in the stomach with a shotgun. Wounded but not down, Dwight knocks the weapon away and, believing his own wound to be fatal, tells William that his job is done. He urges William to take his car, which is hidden in the woods, and escape. Dwight reveals a shocking truth. He and William are actually half-brothers, the result of their father's affair. Processing this, William silently leaves the house. Turning to the 2 remaining women, Dwight tells them that his father truly loved their mother and that, in the end, everyone dies. Enraged, the older woman reaches under a recliner and pulls out a machine gun Dwight had overlooked. A sudden burst of rapid gunfire erupts. Despite his injuries, Dwight manages to kill both women. Collapsing onto the floor, blood pooling in his mouth, he repeatedly whispers, "The keys are in the car." Outside, William tosses his shotgun away and quietly walks off the property, leaving everything behind. If you enjoyed this video, don't be shy to hit the like button, and if you disliked it, hit the dislike button twice, just to be sure. It would be best if you watched the whole movie. Thank you very much for watching. Please subscribe for more videos like this.